6 o'clock on March 18th, 2026, the Milford High School Building Committee meeting will come to order. First item on the agenda is approval of meeting minutes from February 4th. I know they were distributed. Anybody questions or comments? Motion from Al Correa, second from Mike Walsh. All those in favor? Aye. That is unanimous. The second item is approval of warrants. We have two. We have a for Melissa Bullock in the amount of $922.20, and another warrant with multiple invoices attached. Predominantly, I think it's all next level and HMFH. I'm pretty sure of that, but
That's right.
I think that's true. In the amount of $117,222.22.
Motion on the first warrant?
Just the first one, okay. Second, second, so Pat Holland and Chris Wilson. All those in favor? Aye. That is unanimous. And on the second one, $117,222.22.
Motion.
Motion, Pat. Second, Joe Calagione. Any discussion? And all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
It's also unanimous. The next item on the agenda is the owner project manager update. James Riesel, please.
Welcome back, everyone. Good seeing you. We've been seeing a lot of you guys as part of HMFH's getting started, but as the full school committee, it's been, I think, about a month. I'm just going to go quickly here, budget review, and then schedule, and then turn it over to HMFH. So in terms of budget, so now that they're on board, we have, our budget that's going to be set for a while now. We have a couple of moves, in the revised total budget, that third column is where we're looking, at the first one's set, the second one's set, and the third one is what we have for miscellaneous, and we already have some earmarks for that. One of them notably being like a geothermal test well we want to do as part of this phase, not next, and then, the potential hiring of a CM at risk. And then other miscellaneous costs. So that's actual spent to date are the invoices, and so there's, you see HMFH's first, and so that's where we're going. Any questions?
Yeah, I do. You have spent to date of $180,000, and we just approved the warrant in the amount of $177,000. Where's the money that was paid out prior to that?
I don't think it was 100. What was the warrant? It should have just been 20 and 97.
I'm sorry, you're right.
Yeah.
117,000.
Yeah.
I'm misthinking.
No, it's fine.
Okay. The other question I did have is where will the reimbursement from MSBA be reflected?
We typically do not, but we can show that when it comes in, only because it's a delayed process. Once we submit, then 3 to 4 weeks later, they cut a check directly to the accountant. I don't really know when it comes, but
Do you know if we've been reimbursed to date?
No, we have not. We have not submitted one yet.
Okay, so I think it's important that we have a full picture.
Yep.
So that when we start getting those numbers, that it be reflected.
Okay. Not a problem.
Anyone else?
And especially in this phase, so what I'll do is I'll show another column showing you reimbursement. I will show the planned reimbursement, and then it shouldn't be any different. There shouldn't be anything. And so,
I want to be totally transparent.
Yeah, so you can see. Yep.
So, the reason there's nothing shown is we haven't got any yet.
That's right. That's right.
Okay.
Next slide, thank you. And so this slide is on schedule. I specifically went high level because Stephanie beside me is going to go in incredibly great detail about these items. But just to help you guys out in terms of the school building committee, and then she'll start breaking it down into the educational visioning groups and things like that when she goes through. But this is our schedule. So we plan on meeting. Today is in March 18th. We actually had a change from April 1st to April 8th for the working group, and then April 15th is be the one meeting in April is all we need. One meeting in May, but then we need the 2 meetings in June. And I say need because of the June 18th the submit preliminary design program to the MSBA. There's a lot of discussions going on and approvals that we need and packaging, and then approvals that we need to submit those. So that's why typically whenever we have a submission, and there's those three, we'll be having 2 meetings that month prior to that submission. And so without any questions on that? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a request, and put you in the hot seat for a minute. So I've been traveling, got back, and I went on BidDocs, which has all of our stuff. And I noticed that it's pretty empty.
Yeah.
And so I want to put a little pressure saying, like, this is great, but I'd like to see the calendar have all this information. So if I have time, like, for instance, when the schools went to go visit all the schools, I had some time, so I hopped on the school bus and got to see the schools, which was fantastic, right? But we have a lot going on. It'd be nice to have a consolidated calendar.
Yes.
So we know. So if somebody has time, we can just pop in and be like, hey, what's going on? Right?
Excellent. That is the intent of the bid docs, and so yes, we just, after we review this, well, I'll pop that into bid docs, and then all of the meetings here will be there, so you can actually see them. That's a great
We
point.
actually had this conversation yesterday.
Oh, good.
But I'm going to add to that. What I'd ask you to do is when you post a document, I presume you are giving it a label?
Yes.
Okay, so like the most recent document says it's minutes, but it's actually today's school building committee packet.
Right.
No joke. That was my second point. Thank you.
Yeah.
Because I was trying to go through minutes to
Right.
catch up
Yeah.
on meetings, and I couldn't
Yeah,
figure out what minutes were
exactly.
when because they weren't posted the right dates. So
Yeah.
thank
So,
you.
thank you, Mike.
Yeah.
So along the same thing, let's give it a useful description if we can.
So we will I will modify that. We were trying to keep it so that when you were getting the package, you'd be getting it from Melissa via email, and then the rec would be bid docs, but
But if we approve minutes tonight for like a February meeting,
yeah.
it's hard to find that February meeting minutes because it's buried in the document for today. The way it's labeled for today.
Interesting.
So I'll let you figure that out.
Right.
Okay, yep.
Yeah,
we'll figure it out.
again,
Yeah.
we're kind of finding our way through this.
Yeah.
Yes.
But
Yes.
to your point, and the intent is to get everything up there. James, when I spoke with him yesterday, he was more of the mindset, after something is approved to post it, I said, no.
Right.
The second it's generated, put it there, so there's a pre-meeting package, and if something changes, make it a post-meeting package also.
Sound good?
And that's
Yeah,
kind of where we're
yeah,
at the
okay.
moment.
Yeah, just, the one thing I would hesitate is make sure there's a way of, things that have been approved need to be identifiable.
As
opposed to
approved.
Things that are, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So again,
versus draft or
even
yeah,
in the
exactly.
title- In the title.
Draft approved.
Even in the title.
We'll do that.
Is there a limit to
Yeah,
how
I
much?
don't know how.
I don't think so.
docs-
I don't think so.
Okay.
So we'll figure it out. So yeah, if there's nothing else, I'll turn it over to Stephanie.
Okay, then the next item is the design team update.
Okay. So, today's meeting, going over the work plans, I'll skip through this quickly. But I wanted to kind of just highlight on this slide, what we have coming up is that our ed visioning, so tomorrow we're gonna have another section of Shadow Day and school building tours happening, and then next Friday, so a week from Friday, we'll be having the first visioning gathering for the larger group that's going to be talking about what they've seen on the building tours and how they're seeing program adjacencies coming together and kind of start diving into that level of detail for how the education is going to fit into the building. And then paired with the envisioning process, we've also, HMFH's team has been meeting with various department heads at the school, beginning to have our kind of deep dive to understand what spaces they're in the existing high school, what spaces they're using, where their offices are, where they're meeting with students, to understand their program so that we can populate the MSBA's space summary, which is kind of the master document that dictates the what of spaces that will be in the new high school. And while we've been meeting with teachers, we're also walking around the building, so we're trying to get into every space so that we've got a full, we're marking up a set of plans for our own knowledge, color coding it so that we understand what programs are happening next to who in the existing building, and being able to ask teachers, does that work for you? Do you need to be near someone else? So it's helping just wrap our brains around the program and how it's working. Quick shot of the tour group has gone to a couple existing, occupied buildings, being Attleboro and Weymouth's Chapman Middle School, but they're also touring our Bristol Plymouth Voc-Tech school that's still under construction right now, but wrapping up. We wanted to bring them there because it's a good Voc-Tech model for something as Milford enters, having those Voc-Tech spaces come into their vocabulary. All right, so back to schedule. Through a chart in here, some people are more graphic. The next few will be kind of word breakdown. But in general, this is, so February through June is what we have for this submission process. You can see, where we are now, we're heavy on gathering that existing conditions data, which also includes the talking to the teachers and finding out how the school is operating. As we march along, the yellow bar is representing us starting to, as the architecture team, diving into how do those programs start to fit on the site as far as, all of that square footage being a new building, some of the square footage being a new building, some of it being renovation, and we'll start to test those options out. So with the goal that as we get into May, that's what we need to be presenting to you all to see what are those dozen-ish options of how that new ad reno 7 to 12 enrollment, 9 to 12 enrollment, 8 to 12 enrollment, all of those configurations and how they shake out. But in May, we're having those conversations.
Can we get that document on the bid docs as well too, or when it's
there.
updated? Yeah,
I'm sorry?
This is here.
is that on bid docs?
Yep.
That was.
That was part of the package.
It's in the packet, you're right.
But the beginning slides were not.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so what I'd ask is,
We can put a
So
fun
pre and
on
post.
there.
That was, exactly.
Yeah, so-
We're always going to do the after.
right, so there
Yeah.
should be
Yeah.
the pre-meeting
The pre-meeting, that's new.
and then the post-meeting package. Then we'll have a complete record.
100%.
So the next few slides are going to go through kind of what the agenda items are going to be for all these meetings. I'm not going to read through them all right now. I wanted to just highlight kind of those key decision points as we go along to start getting folks thinking about those. So kind of our next working group and then subsequent building committee, we're going to start to hone in on that discussion of 7th grade and 8th grade. We'll be bringing our findings of, when you remove that 8th grade or 7th, 8th grade population out of your other schools, how many classrooms is that leaving you? And then when you add in the enrollment projections that the studies are showing us, how do the numbers shake out? So we'll be coming back with that data to have discussions
Hold
on.
on one second. Okay.
So I just want to ask, are we in any way in jeopardy of having our enrollment downsized based upon what the MSBA is continuing to view in real numbers as we move forward with this project?
Based on our experience, hard no, because we've had, my previous project actually also had second thoughts and said, no, I don't think my enrollment's actually getting there. And they approached the MSBA and had that conversation, said, hey, could we actually bring the enrollment down? And we're told a hard no. The enrollment that you were locked into, you were locked into,
It's locked
and
in.
that is it.
Yeah, I thought we were locked
Yeah,
in.
that was my understanding, but it's
Yeah.
good to hear that from
Yeah.
you.
You mentioned 7th grade.
Yes. That's part of it. Right now, your SOI that went in is blessed to have to study 7th grade through 12th grade, 8th grade through 12th grade, 9th grade through 12th
So-
grade.
If the original statement of interest was for either a 9 through 12
Yes.
or an 8 through 12 school.
Right.
Yes.
And then we asked about the possibility of looking at a 7 through 12 school. And because we asked a question during eligibility, that's now baked in as far as looking at it.
Oh, okay.
Doesn't mean we can or should or would do it, but we are committed to looking at it from a global perspective. At the end of the day, it's probably good information to have.
Okay.
Yeah, from I had the
But,
same.
but just, and one more thing, that's also a different enrollment number, if I remember.
Yes.
So it's 2120 for a 8 through 12 school
And that goes-
and 24 something?
Yes, that's what I recall. It was approaching 2,500.
Yeah.
It gives us a lot of data. Whether we do it or not, that's a whole different discussion for a different time.
And that's, at the moment, my fingers are crossed for you that we're going to come back and have good news and go, oh, okay, we remove 8th grade, you've got all sorts of space, but I'm going to let, the numbers tell us that as we go through, and then
Remove
that'll be.
8th grade or 7th grade?
If we remove 8th grade, does that free you up enough room that even when 7th grade expands, is there space to still fit it in the
We'll find
elementary
out.
schools? But
Quick
To be
question.
determined.
You may have said
Yes.
it earlier. When is that decision made with the grade configuration on that timeline?
So that will be on the table until we get to the kind of late May, early June decision. So that 12 plus options that I'm saying is the full range of, it's a new building that's 7 through 12, or on the other end of the spectrum, it's 9 to 12 and the full renovation and everything in between. So
Yeah.
for each enrollment, 7, 12, 8, 12, 9, 12, we're looking at new building and reno.
And that's which date, the June?
That's so so come June, yeah.
So that's why there's 3 meetings scheduled very quickly.
Exactly. So in that first meeting in June 3rd, that's where we'll need to know what are the 3 options that you really want to be bringing forward, and then as we're packaging up the report, then we are packaging to say, here was the 12 options the building committee has met, and these are the 3 priority now. And the report goes in with that information.
Remember, we seemed to have a slow start, and I said it was going to get busy?
Yeah.
It's going to get busy real fast.
And do we make that decision, or is that school committee that ultimately kind of makes that final call?
I'm guessing it's school committee. When we're building a school,
If
they
you're
want.
reconfiguring
Yeah.
But isn't
grades
it
and
also
buildings.
town meeting?
At the end of the day,
Once you figure out what we're doing, the next time we go to town meeting is to get funded
Yeah.
Well,
This is fun.
for what the school department orders and what we can deliver for a certain price. But I believe that's true. That's a school department.
It's a little bit of both,
It's gonna be
because we will need a vote from the school building committee.
Okay, sure.
In terms of the MSBA, they want to vote from this
If
group.
they say,
But you're going to make that decision on your own?
we're not voting 9 through 12,
Right.
I guess, they get that.
I mean, we may have some pushback based upon what the desires are that the town can't afford, right? I mean,
Yeah, of course.
It's entirely possible that we have to push back a little
Of
bit.
course.
Yeah.
Of course, Ed, which is why these are open meetings. Everything is public, and I want this information, every version of it out quickly to everybody. It's important. But yeah, and then it's going to be, at the end of the day, it's going to be up to the school department and the building committee to present on town meeting floor why this makes sense. But we're going to be the ones closest to the ground on it that understand what the options are, whether it's, new school demo, add reno, 8 through 12, 7 through 12. Don't forget, there's still pre-K here. What are we going to do with admin? Our job is to filter that down into something that's digestible in a hour presentation to town meeting.
Which is an excellent segue to the second thing I have highlighted,
Yes.
circled on here, which
Yeah.
is the non-reimbursed spaces. So that space summary that I'm talking about, right now, we're getting the educators up and running to start putting that ed plan together, and that will go in with good arguments why anything above the MSBA's space summary baseline for square footage, if the stage that, MSBA's stage is 1,000 square feet. If the Performing Arts Department writes a really good ed plan, they say, no, we can't operate with 1,000 square feet, we need a 2,000 square foot stage for X, Y, Z reasons, and hopefully the MSBA will bless that. But we will be outlining to this group, here's all the spaces right now that are out above what the MSBA blesses for reimbursement. It'll be a little bit back and forth between this study phase and then the next study phase, the preferred schematic report, because we're going to have to send the end program into the MSBA in June, and then we'll get comments back to really know what are they going to be approving or not be approving as far as the educational spaces. The district admin right now definitely falls outside of that, so that's, a needed function, but I'm sure, some discussions to be had just so that everyone is on board with that as a non-reimbursed space as far as the MSBA is concerned when we're building district admin. Pre-K floats back and forth. I do think with the way Milford's pre-K serves a high population of special needs in that age group, that tends to be a very good basis for the MSBA approving that as an approvable reimbursement space. It's not a guarantee, but again, that's a candidate for, okay, we're going to write the ed plan to say, here's why we believe it should be an approved space, and then we'll get MSBA's comments back on that. So we'll be highlighting those kind of spaces on the space summary.
Just something you said, and then I'm going back to, I think what you had said at one point in time, James, that there was some discussion as to whether administrative space would be allowed or not because it was in an existing building or not. And the way you said that is now it's definitely no. Is that definitely the way we're moving
They have
forward?
been sprinkling this nugget out there for a while, but no actual project advisory has materialized yet to actually say that that is a thing. So at the moment, we have zero to hang our hat on for that one. I would keep your fingers and toes crossed, and maybe it will happen, but
Yeah, I guess at a minimum, you put it in and say, we think it is, and let them say, no, it isn't.
Right.
we could do that. Yes, yeah.
I mean,
for sure.
I certainly wouldn't go and say, it definitely isn't, so we're going to consider it that way. If they put the nugget out there,
Yeah.
let's see what the
Yeah,
what
no, that's
breadcrumbs
fair.
roll.
Yep.
Doesn't Attleboro have the central office in the building?
Yes, and
What
you've
you
100%.
don't know is whether it's
Paid for it.
reimbursed.
Correct. Exactly.
Got it.
Exactly.
99% sure it was not.
Reimbursed.
Correct, it was not reimbursed. Maybe the rule to follow, as you can imagine, the MSBA tries to create rules that applies to all. So that includes elementary schools, that includes middle schools and high schools. Well, typically high schools have the central admin just typically, but now that's detracting from every elementary school, so it's giving preferential treatment in that. Anyway, they've just made the rule no central admins for any of the projects, for an elementary school or high school.
But is it that they don't allow it or they don't pay?
They don't pay. It's allowed. It is allowed, exactly. And going forward, please, if that is going to be a common question, common theme, so if anyone has questions, one, is it allowed, and two, will they pay for it? That's always going on. That's if you want to frame your questions, that's the way you frame them.
Because there are things that are not allowed,
Correct.
period.
That's right.
That was my point. Yeah.
Pool is not allowed unless you already have one.
Right.
Not allowed to be part of the project.
Just, I guess, a quick follow-up question. So when you say it's allowed, but not paid for, so when you do the planning for it, designing and so on and so forth,
Yes.
somehow that's taken out of the equation?
Yes, there's a fabulous 3011 that James will be guiding the process on, which is the MSBA's form for exactly parsing that out. So that spreadsheet then parses out the various net square footage of different programs to take it out of your overall reimbursement
So
calculation.
the bigger the school and the smaller the central office, the smaller the impact is to the reimbursable component.
So I can work from home.
We'd almost have to,
No, we'll get them a new trailer.
I think Rick said there was space in town hall. You could find.
yeah, that's right.
Oh, boy.
I mean, I think going forward, that's one of the things they're going to have to look at to a certain extent, though, is, again, going back to my statement of maybe they will, maybe they won't. My feeling is that if you put it in the school as part of the building, you have some leverage to do that. If you take it and say, well, you know what, we have to do it on site, we can put it in a separate building, they're probably going to say that whole separate building is yours, whether it's, so, I think that's going to become part of the issue as we move down and you look at what we need or don't need as to what we want to go forward with.
Typically, the pace of, typically the pace for this project is, we submit a PDP, I'm going to just call it the all-in. That's what
Yeah.
I'm calling it.
Right.
The MSBA reviews that and provides comments and says at that point, okay, this is in, this is out, this is in. And then the next month after that, we all have discussions about, okay, sharpening the pencil. Do we really need this? Can that fit in town hall? Can this go over here?
But at the end of the day, all things considered, anything that we can build as part of this project will be the most economical way it could ever be done, short of the Great Depression. It's just, you can't build it standalone on your own. You can't do it later. Anything part of this building,
Yeah.
reimbursable or not, it's not like you have an option that you could put administration somewhere else. It either stays where it is as it is, which is not an option, or we have to do something
That's
as a
just a fact.
community.
It's just a fact.
It's just a fact.
I have
It's
a-
just,
Yeah,
Michael.
I have a suggestion for you and
Sure.
James. At a future meeting, and I've talked to James about this, I've talked to you guys about this, it's actually a lot more complicated on the reimbursement. There's caps and there's
Oh,
rules.
yeah.
I think we should spend maybe 20, 30 minutes in
Oh, I
your
have a whole presentation, yeah.
just for this, because we could spend a whole hour talking about this today. And I learned a lot, but I don't even think we should touch it tonight. It's pretty complicated, but I definitely think we should all understand how it works.
Absolutely. I think one more belabored piece is that, we're talking about the space summary, and for all the math inclined or the process people, the best way to describe the space summary is it is an Excel spreadsheet that the MSBA creates. We all, on every project, every school project, the architect has to fill it out, and they own it. But first thing you do is put in that design enrollment, input design enrollment, 2,100. Automatically, 24 classrooms, 2 art rooms, 2 chorus, whatever it is, a gym this size. So they actually, it comes up with what they project is what the size of the school should be. And every school in Massachusetts is doing the same thing, so it's, they have some variations where if it's a middle school, it has, it's a different tab on that Excel spreadsheet, and same thing with elementary, because those are different. But by and large, that's, everyone's using up against the same standards and limitations. And so that's why Stephanie's saying, that may fit our educational model, and it may not. That may fit what we want going forward, and it may not. And that's what we're talking about, and that's what we'll be discussing and going through.
All right, so then, now that I've got you all awake now, as we move through April, the next topics to be we put line items for potential votes. It doesn't necessarily need to be a vote. We're just going to need to, be getting good feedback, and you as the building committee can decide whether this is something you feel like you need to officially take a vote on, or no, it's not consequential enough item. We have a clear path forward. Doesn't need an official vote. But knowing, okay, what are the CTE programs that are coming into the school, so that we're able to start honing in on what those spaces are going to look like, along with what we've talked about now, the non-reimbursable MSBA spaces. And again, as we've all just said, that's still going to be a hypothetical until we've gotten into PSR, so we won't really know 100% whether it's reimbursed or not reimbursed until we get to the next study phase. So then as we get to May, now we're going to be layering those options with what I'll be talking about next, the goals matrix. So setting up criteria of goals for the project in a few different categories is kind of the first big homework task for the committee, so that we're able to all have a clear understanding of what is that tangible metric of how we're going to confirm which option is the right one for Milford to go forward with. And May through to June, we're layering those goals matrices over the options and starting to weigh those out so that we can make some decisions about what are those 3 options we want to move forward with. And then, so right now, the way I've penciled this in is that, next slide. So, beginning of June, we're having that conversation. We're narrowing it down to the 3 options. HMFH is going to be working to assemble the full report package. So, June 3rd, you're going to have a good picture of, okay, we will leave that night knowing kind of where the discussion is going and what's going in the report. Then, the wrong way. Then a completed report package, so just like the full official final product would get distributed to the committee on that Tuesday, the June 16th, And then Wednesday, June 17th, we'd be coming in to vote to approve to submit it to the MSBA. So that's my timeline for that. That all feeds into overall schedule that we're looking at. So in layering in kind of the MSBA submission dates for the upfront study phase and into schematic design, and then putting in what we believe is kind of, at the moment, a very realistic number for the construction of the school. That was when we were targeting a September opening date. So the September of 2030, giving a realistic time for construction wasn't feeling like we were getting there, so we were, used September of 2031 as our targeted opening of school, turnover, move-in of the town, claiming ownership of the building as happening more in April, May. So you're having that summer move-in period.
So it's moved out a year.
Correct. So 2031 would be the September opening.
What I asked them to do was to make believe it's still the 30th, because every
Yes.
project expands to fill all available
Right.
time. And recognizing that there's still a debate whether the existing high school was moved in the winter or in the fall. We don't know. But the sooner, the better.
Yeah, put another way, we only have a year we ideally want to start in September, and now unfortunately there's a year between 2030 and 2031, and so we don't have enough for 2030, but it seems a little bit too much for 2031. So that's why we're, for now, before we get the CM on board or another advisement,
When did you say you moved in? September?
Can't remember.
Good answer.
Debbie tells me it was the fall.
I'm almost positive it was winter.
I'm pretty sure it was
I
the
thought
winter.
it was second semester.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure.
that's winter. So there's a history there.
That's right.
Consistency is good.
There's a precedent, 31
Yes.
West Fallon Street has to be moved in after
January.
Christmas vacation.
There you go. One thing, I guess I want to, another layer. So, at least with Woodland, right, we finished construction, finished in June, so we had the summer, we're moving in furniture. Well, with this, that's you would expect from maybe a normal academic school, academic high school only. With the VOTEC, we actually need to start that earlier, in like April and May, because DESI needs to come by and certify and make sure it's all.
But also in the working group, one of the things that came out of that was it's possible to open up the non-VOTEC stuff
We're looking at that option too, yeah.
and phase in the VOTEC
Right,
stuff.
so maybe,
And that compresses the time frame potentially. So you could move in, everybody's in school, but the VOTEC program opens up 6 months later. So they're looking at every option that anybody can come with. Somebody comes up with another idea, please send it up the food chain.
That would be challenging.
It depends upon the footprint. It depends
You
upon
set
the,
up a program for VOTEC for 4 years, and you cut half a year off of it.
They wouldn't start.
Yeah,
until
it's
the
not-
year after.
right,
Yeah.
6 months, but.
so you could
So
move.
like juniors and seniors, they wouldn't have the full experience.
The way the kids have to survey the courses, they need that first semester, that fall semester, to decide if they like culinary or decide if they like
So
woodworking.
if we start at Christmas, the first year is just
No
traditional.
VOTEC.
Right, no
No
vocab.
VOTEC, okay.
Yeah.
That makes me feel better.
Right, so I mean, they're
Yeah.
looking at it as an option
Right.
of phasing the move-in.
That makes more sense.
I also think if you opened in December, you probably wouldn't shift the 8th grade up until the year after.
Another point,
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
another point.
so, we're keeping track of
Than
it.
where they are. So you have more,
Okay.
so they're right on top of it, looking at those options.
Yeah, because that will also play into, as we look at options that might be building some and then demolishing some. That depends on, whose spaces have we just demolished, and that's a good point, and helps that, even if we are building new 8th grade space, but they're not moving in until the following year, that gives you a little bit more swing room potentially for high school students to be in that.
You could actually hold them out a whole year at that point. You know, if eighth grade doesn't have to move at the same time.
Yeah.
And I think there are lots of, this project Can't Escape Hollins, my wife went on the visioning tour to view some of the schools. And, you know, she was looking at how some of the shop spaces were interspersed with the academic spaces, and she saw value in that. And then there were other shop spaces that were segregated. She also saw value in that. So I think there's going to be some input relative to the whole visioning team as to what we should or shouldn't do with that. So there's a lot of options right now.
Yes.
Okay, so now we're going to get into the kind of goals discussion, and my hope for today is that I'm kind of laying the stage for what the buckets are with some so the sheets I handed out that have just a little HMFH memo, that's our first pass at an example of what goals could be for the town of Milford and for the Milford High School project.
And let me back, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
because all of these, you know, that was a perfect segue, you know, we have options. So how are we as a committee going to come down from all of these options and be able to defend our decisions with, you know, and that is the purpose of these goals. That is how we do it, where, you know, we're going to have, you know, as she's showing there, you know, we're trying to make it so that it is almost as mathematical as we can. You know, like we said, this was important to us. This was a high of importance. Therefore, this option fell to the wayside. And so, because someone's going to ask, why didn't you renovate? Why didn't you just add paint? and you know, why didn't you just replace the roof? And so these goals are what's going to help determine why we and how we chose what we chose.
So this is an example of, you know, what we're working towards here, that all of Milford's options will be on the table with kind of a numerical index of how it ranked in the overall goals, and that will, you know, help bring us towards a winner.
I had a quick question.
Yes, absolutely.
Pollard and Defied, what's that?
Oh, so this is Needham.
Two different sites.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was like, wait a
sorry.
minute.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, that makes
So
more sense.
on this example,
more
they
sense.
had different sites that they were looking at
Thank
as
you.
well. Yeah. So.
And I just got to ask, based on this,
Yeah.
did they go with 1335? Or I'm sorry.
I'll just say yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
To slightly more complicate, but we believe will lead to a better result of ranked options. Once we've established a list of options, we would like to then have the committee go through and give a, you know, numerical weight to that. So, you know, having the pool that's there now renovated and maintained, that's a 10. We're not going to do a project unless it's keeping the pool and renovating it, or no, it's a 3. We could give it, or, you know, take it or leave it. So that will be the second. Once we've established the list of goals, second step is then giving it this 1, 3, 5, 10 ranking, so that we believe that will kind of help give a better spread to the, you know, once we've summed all the totals of that, that's going to give a better, be able to better illustrate what's really taking the lead for being the correct option, so that, you know, it's not just like, oh, you know, you're not just cumulatively adding, well, this achieves 5 goals and this achieves 6 goals, but if this is achieving 5 goals and this is achieving 6, but that 6th goal is, you know, the most critical thing overall, then the weight of that value should really be getting higher than just a 1-point differential between the two. So I'll click through quick and then go back from it. So right now, the buckets I've identified is that there'd be educational goals, facility goals, and in that sense, facility is meaning just how the building is organized and what it has in it to support the education of the building that's happening within the building. Then there's operational goals, so that's then, you know, the facility's operational side of the building. What are your utility costs? Utility costs being a very big one on that one. Fourth bucket being community and site goals, things like, you know, how is drop-off happening? Should pre-K drop-off and high school drop-off definitely be separate paths? Do they need to be coming in off of different streets? How many fields do we need to be maintaining on site to make sure that the, fields complex is still supporting the athletic programs of the town? So those are the, let's go backwards. Those are the 4 big buckets. If anyone has any that are really percolating in your mind, says, oh yeah, this needs to be a goal, I would love to hear them now. Or you can, report back to us as well in the next week or so.
I have a question. In terms of the life cycle analysis,
Yes.
especially reno versus new, and just understanding the longevity of those choices, where would that fall into this metrics that you're aligning with?
So you're meaning as far as like a carbon analysis
It
for?
would be a carbon analysis, but there's also an underlayment inherent to just renovating the building, how much that's going to last versus a more, in a way, arguably a more long-term solution of going maybe partially to fully new construction, and how much that would last versus the investment of reno, and how long would that stretch us? So just wondering where.
So I think for the like the baseline for us, even in a renovation scheme, we're still seeing that as completely renovating down to the bones of the building, so that the envelope of what, even if there is an exterior wall remaining, that envelope is going to be brought up to the standards of the new building, so that effectively any piece of the building that we're still keeping is still meeting the performance standards of a new construction on it.
Okay. But like, let's say a roof, like you can, and the existing structure, there is a limit to how much you will be able to sustain it for and maintain it. So I'm just wondering, how are you capturing that in those options? To also consider that as an option, because it does pertain to the longevity of the choices we're about to make.
Yes, yeah. So I think I'm pausing only because I don't think I wouldn't be presenting a renovation piece to it that I didn't feel confident that we were going to be able to construct to a level that, if
That's
it's
fair.
if it's
That's
a
what
roof
it is.
that's we're seeing is so compromised, that's not going to be able to be supportive to new the appropriate levels of insulation that we need to get onto it and be compatible with meshing into it, then that's a red flag. And you're right. So then we would need to highlight, if we're keeping this piece, it's not going to be up to today's standards. But I think
We typically follow, so to make that apples to apples, right? We typically follow, how can we make this project last 50 years? This is a 50-year project, 50 to 100. We'll start at 50. And so, to that end, new we know is going to last 50 years. What can we do to the renovation? Whatever we're going to do to the renovation, we're not just going to do a 5-year repair, because that's not apples to apples now. How would you compare, how do you, so we would be saying,
I don't think you can, because first of all, you have new energy code to deal with. You have
Yes.
accessibility issues to deal with. Any renovation is effectively
Triggering.
new construction
Right.
when you're done. But it's a great question. How do you look at it? But I think at the end of the day, whether it's renovation or new, it's new.
right. So I guess in the structural aspect of it, our structural engineers have done their first pass through. They're identifying for one key piece being where are all of our expansion joints here, so that I know that as we chop off, where am I changing a function of said portion of the building? If I've chopped this piece off, is this still going to be able to function for me and be structurally sound? So we're having all of our engineers walk through and do that analysis, so that we'll be able to have that flow report to know what we're able to work
Is there
with.
something specific
Yeah.
you're going to ask, you want to ask them to do?
Not something specific, but just to make sure that it is tallied as a metric somehow. And it sounds like you're just gonna, just to make sure I understand.
Yeah.
50-year plan, make sure that every product or every building outcome will basically make sure it lasts 50 years.
Yes.
And maybe the investment may be greater in some than others, and that's how we can determine where we go. The embodied carbon piece would be really nice to also understand.
Yeah.
And if there's any type of limitations in terms of, or better equipment that can potentially go in new construction versus reno plus new. Because I understand that in inheritance, when you go reno, it's all new, but there's limitations when you're inheriting structure versus just starting from scratch. So I'm just wondering.
Yeah.
It's not challenging
Yeah,
or
yeah.
anything. I just want to be very clear about that. I think you're doing a wonderful job. I'm just wondering, where does that fall into the metric?
Yeah, I think definitely a, leaning heavily on, our structural engineer has been the only one I've worked with for 20 years. So we kind of lean heavily into them to know, like, all right, what, our building types and what we're going to build. So they're good at guiding us to say, is this going to support what we're going to do to make this that new 50-year lifespan building of it? And then the systems piece of it, we'll get into the bigger life cycle cost analysis of building systems. And so anything that's in the existing building would be coming out, and then we'll be having that renovation piece would just become a portion of the new building system. So that will feed into system selection to make sure that that's compatible with what we've got, knowing that it's, concrete waffle slabs and it's feasible to fit through into that structure.
Thank you.
Patrick, do you have?
Yeah, I think very quickly, so I think Carmen's question is so important. I mean, in my mind, it's how much is this going to cost and how long will it last? And those are sort of 1 and 2 in my head. We have a 53-year-old high school right now that's spalling concrete and rebar poking through on the exterior of a Sun apartment building that would fail, right? I know the roof's going to go. I know lots of things are going to need repair, but that sort of wasn't one of the things that I thought would need repair. In my experience sort of on this committee, we had a lot. I think we spent 2 meetings talking about should we have a peaked roof or a flat roll rubber roof. I mean, we spent a lot of time on that, and there were durability issues with both, right? And so we're sort of balancing cost against a 100-year roof versus a 35-year roof, and how much, what are those costs going to be. So I guess my question would be, picking up on Carmen's point, are we going to have an opportunity to make a determination on the things that we think we're going to spend more money on because we know that it's integral to the integrity of the building, so that I know that when my grandkids are in that building 35 years from now, it's not going to require buckets to be on the floor of the lobby because we're collecting so much water, right? So I mean, is that something that we pick out as we move through that process? I'm assuming that would be the case.
So the intention with, as we lay out the new and reno new options, is that we'll be working with our cost estimators and identifying that square footage that is renovation, talking with them about what is structurally there now, and they'll be able to give a dollar value to what they believe will, be needed to bring that square footage up to code, and then carrying the dollar amount that we're seeing for new building construction. So there'll be kind of a by the square footage parsing out of reno versus new as we look at those options, with a dollar amount being assigned to the renovation that is
And that dollar
conducive.
amount's going to be assumption of a base of 50 years.
Correct,
Okay,
yes.
and then as we move forward, we can obviously make different decisions as a committee.
For
Yeah, we can decide to make choices. We can decide to spend more money on certain things. And,
Yes.
Yeah.
But the choice is being more, you want your building to be, I don't know how right now, the basing out like a 50-year building
Yes.
as a baseline, I'm not sure what I would direct my cost estimator to do, to say, oh, it should be a 100.
I understand that, yes, I understand that
Okay.
completely. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, it's fine. I think 2 things we can't lose sight of too is if we go with new, where do we put it? If we go with a reno, where do we put them?
Right.
Them being the students.
Right.
2, they're key factors that, are going to play a major, I think, in part of the decision. If in fact we find that building new is the way to go, that's great. Now where do we place this building with what we've already invested up there? We decide to go the renovation. Now what's the plan to move the students around?
I also think that our intent to bring the CM in earlier adds to this, because, again, I've said it before, the guy who builds it looks at things differently than the guy who draws it.
Yes.
That was a great question, Carmen.
Yeah, thank
Really
you.
good question.
All right. And moving on.
Oh, well, so that was, does anybody have any thoughts and goals for me this evening?
Be careful what you ask for.
I know, I'm happy
Yeah,
to
be
hear it all.
very careful.
I have a list on my phone.
This could be a hostile group.
All right, and then kind of final topic for this evening is, so James's line earlier, you know, you plug that enrollment in and there's numbers that it spits out at you in the space summary sheet. So while I've been actively meeting with educators today, these numbers are prior to any input of what the educators are actually needing. This is the MSBA spit out of square footage and spaces. So the goal here was just to kind of give you a flavor for how things increase incrementally or not incrementally with the various enrollments going from smallest on the 9th, 12th on your left and 7th, 12th grade being the largest enrollment on the right.
So these are our numbers, right? Or are these examples?
These are
yes,
proposed
yeah.
numbers for our Milford High School project.
Based off our numbers.
Based on our design enrollments.
Yeah,
Yep.
correct.
Yes.
So total is shaking out, you know, just hovering around 400,000 square feet for 9th, 12th grade, getting north of 450 for the 8th, 12th grade, and then beginning to cross the 500,000 square foot threshold if it's a 7th through 12th grade enrollment. That gross square footage for all three of those is inclusive of district administration spaces, pre-K, pool spaces. And then to kind of go into a little detail of general classrooms and science labs, you can see kind of tick up as the enrollment ticks up. Health and PE number is primarily the gymnasium space, which is a 12,000 square foot gym, which is a full competition gym and 2 practice courts overlaid on it with room for bleachers. So you can see that number doesn't change too much. You have built about 5,000 square feet, which are kind of just larger locker/trainer spaces.
How'd it go down between 9 through 12 and 8 through 12? The health and PE is actually 500 square feet smaller.
Well, that's probably an error, and that 580 should probably be the 8th through 12th grade. And then the auditorium space, you have maxed out auditorium size at your 9th, 12th enrollment, so that is constant between all the enrollment sizes.
You have any idea what our auditorium is now?
Yes.
You were just about
67?
Yeah, 6,000 square, 6,600
What's NSF?
net square feet.
Thank you.
Yep.
Net square feet versus gross square feet, and that's going to be, that's part of our behind-the-scenes calculations, but you need to know about. The MSBA doesn't like their buildings being more than, the gross square feet being more than 1.5 of the net. So, you know, you can't have these super wide hallways and, wonder, well, you can, but anyway, it has to be within this 1.5. They're limiting. They want efficient buildings. They don't want grand space, overly grand spaces. Go ahead.
But they also keep it very tight, because what is also in net gross square feet is all of your stairwells, all of your toilet rooms, all your custodial spaces. Well, not all of your, you have a section that is custodial, but, the custodial closets on all the floors, the emergency electrical closets, that's all also in that gross square footage. So
Yes.
they run a tight ship, keeping it at that 1.5.
Right.
Another quick question. Attleboro, how big was that school?
I don't have
Or
it
what about
memorized.
BP, the
Or Bristol Plymouth?
Bristol Plymouth is around the 400,000 square foot mark.
building?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing that I was waiting to figure out was, what was the size of our existing gym versus what we would be getting new for the MSBA. So, we want to keep it, and so same thing with the auditorium, and I don't know if the cafeteria was in there or not, but no, mainly the auditorium and the gym. Turned out that we are getting actually a bigger gym with the MSBA program than what we have now. So there's less of it. Well, go ahead.
Now it just matters which is more expensive.
Yes.
Renovation of what we have.
That's right.
Or new, larger.
That's right.
demo.
But at least it took away that we absolutely need to keep it because it's bigger than what the MSBA is giving us. Same thing with the auditorium. Auditorium is actually smaller, 67 versus 75. So it takes away that, well, we need to keep the auditorium because it's bigger. So that's how, that.
Square footage now of the school,
309,000.
309?
309, that's the number I keep hearing, but
Yeah.
I've heard other noise. That's the number we started with. When this committee was born, it was 309,000. I've heard other numbers thrown around since then, but I'm still going back to the 309.
Is Arthur figuring that out?
What do you
Arthur's
have?
working on that.
Yes, good. So HMFH is tasked
TBD.
to give, we are expecting to have a, where'd that number come from, right? And so at least the architect is redrawing the existing school.
Yeah.
We will have a good number
They
to,
have all the original plans,
yes, and they're catifying them.
PDF, unless somebody put them into CAD.
Well, we
That's
lucked out
what
that our
they do.
structural engineer was also on your 2005 pre-K project, and they were able to dig up an old CAD background for
Oh,
us
boy.
of buildings, so that
Well,
has
good.
been useful.
It's 309 until we're told otherwise
Yes.
by a reputable, competent source.
You know what the return for CTE spaces, do you? I don't see it up there. Okay.
But we were, I believe it was like basing in the 2,000 square foot for 7 programs.
Okay. Anyway, my point is,
Yeah.
309 versus this, well, why is it growing or whatever? Well, a good portion of that is the CTE programs, 9 programs.
Yeah.
So we've got to remember that.
Yep.
In a higher population.
And a higher population, yes.
That is my agenda for this evening. So I think, please do send all thoughts on goals our way. There will be, goals that will come out of the visioning process with Mike Perello that will feed into this as well. But I know not everyone on the building committee here is in those ed visioning things, so we want to make sure we're gathering everyone's goals for the project.
Anybody have any questions or comments at this,
Just
Michael?
positive, I got to, I tagged along with the vision committee, and I got to tour some of the schools with the design group. And I have to say that the buildings that HMFH have done are absolutely gorgeous, right? So leaving that day and seeing 3 or 4 schools was actually eye-opening, and my confidence is through the roof now of HMF. So thank you. I'm excited to see what you guys come up with.
I guess,
No
just
pressure.
a generalized comment, at some point you had spoken about talking to the school, and people in the high school and stuff. And I guess if they're leaning towards doing a certain thing, I think it's critical that that comes back to us in terms of making decisions too, especially if it's something that you see and say, most schools don't do this. I mean, people are transient at the end of the day.
Yeah.
They could be gone tomorrow. So when this isn't a reflection of the school personnel is now, but we need to make sure that we build something such that whoever is in there can function as easily as possible, no matter what's going on. So I'm certainly not saying we shouldn't do things that people want, especially if that's how everybody else does it. But if that isn't the way, we need to be cognizant of that as it comes back to us.
And that's exactly why the next item on the agenda is the school committee update, and will continue to stay on the agenda, so long as I'm setting the agenda. But yeah, we need that feedback.
And to answer that, I think what will be helpful in that process will be this back and forth on the space summary, because that's essentially going to be, our really kind of clear directive of the what that we're building, and that a good, indicator of it being out of the normal will be, is this more square footage in that category than the MSBA is
And
typically
again, coming
allowing?
back to us, out of the normal doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. If it's
Right.
something that we feel is
Absolutely.
critical, and hey, that's a great idea,
it.
no other people have been doing that,
Yep.
or you haven't seen that, doesn't mean we don't want to do it, but we
Right.
definitely want to understand it.
Yeah.
We've seen the gamut from districts. We've seen some districts they get back their comments and they see what's not reimbursable and they shave it down as much as they can. But as long as it meets, again, it has to meet their ed plans. And we've seen others that the MSBA's primary focus is on the academics. Right? But you can't get around that many high schools have excellent athletic programs. And so the MSBA has put limits on what they're funding outside of academic programs. Let's put it that way. So we've seen it the other way, where towns and districts that have an excellent athletic program say, yes, we need this extra space for our students to practice, regardless of what the MSBA's caps. So anyway, that'll just give you an idea, so things like that.
Anyone else? Is
Yeah,
there-
I had one. So when I just wanted to go back to like cost. So when you're building your cost plan, are future maintenance costs included on design choices that we make?
Future maintenance costs will come into play when we're doing the systems analysis, when we're doing life cycle cost analysis of what system selection we're doing. Is it going to be geothermal? Is it air source heat pumps? That big picture of things will come into play. The first rush of costs that will be layered on all the other options will be more of a cost comparative, but so we're going to have those 12 options. So it's going to be much more of an order of magnitude cost comparison to help determine which is going to cost more. The way we equalize that is that we bake in and say they're all going to be a geothermal building. So then that kind of, it's not saying that we've decided it's going to be a geothermal building, it's just equalizing the number across the board so that you're able to see which option is going to be more costly. So it's, I guess the short answer would be, it's assuming that the operational cost of the building is a level and it's the same across the board so that you can see construction-wise.
And then later when you make those choices, it'll,
Yeah.
Okay, makes sense.
Anyone else?
Could I just ask a clarifying
Comment.
question? When we're providing feedback, what would be the right way of doing it? Would it be through BitTalk or
I couldn't,
feedback? When we're
How are we
providing-
going to provide feedback?
That's a James question.
send it to Melissa and she'll circulate it to the building committee and everybody. Just in the subject line, what it is. Is that okay, Melissa?
That's fine.
Anyone else? Do we have a school committee update, or is it still too early?
Yeah, nothing specific. I think more from my side, the pipeline's more coming from here, going to school committee
For now.
and keeping them up to date of what we're doing. It sounds like that may change, and
It will.
and I think hearing that, how school committee is going to, or do we want school committee, or how will school committee be involved in that decision-making from 7 through 12, 8 through 12, 9 through 12. So I think that we need to look at that and look ahead at how that's going to be presented to school committee and when and what that timeline would be. So that's going to be important.
Any old business? Any new business?
Just that request for that training. The reimbursement training?
Yes. Okay. To be a future, future presentation.
Then a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Put it either way. All those in favor of adjournment? We are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.